Sunday mornings were supposed to feel peaceful. Pancakes, coffee, the lazy hum of sunlight slipping through the kitchen blinds. But in my house, silence had weight, like an unspoken order waiting to be followed. I was standing at the counter, flipping pancakes with the same precision I used to inspect field gear. Emma, my 17-year-old, sat at the table, scrolling through her phone. No eye contact, no good morning, Mom, just the sound of her nails tapping the screen like a ticking clock. I told myself not to start, not today. But then I saw the sink full of dishes she'd promised to wash last night. My voice slipped into that old tone before I could stop it. Emma, we've talked about this. You have responsibilities in this house. When I say something, I expect it done. She didn't even look up, just sighed, long and loud. I felt something tighten in my chest. That sigh, it was the same one soldiers used to give when I repeated a mission briefing. Except this time, it wasn't defiance. It was distance. Emma, I said again, sharper this time. Answer me. She looked up finally. Her eyes, the same hazel shade as mine, were cold, unreadable. Then she said it. Copy that, Major Lawson. At first I thought I misheard her, but she said it again, slower, with an edge that cut right through me. Whatever you say, Major. And then she stood, grabbed her bag, and walked out. No slam, no yelling, just those words echoing in the air like a gunshot that no one fired. I froze. The spatula in my hand trembled. The smell of burning pancakes filled the room, but I couldn't move. My rank. She'd used my rank. Not Mom, not even Rebecca. Major. It was supposed to be a title of honor, something I bled for, something I carried with pride. But from her lips, it sounded like a curse. When I finally turned off the stove, the kitchen felt foreign. Every magnet on the fridge, the family, photos, the drawings she made as a kid, looked like evidence from another life. The one where I was still Mummy. The one where she used to wait at the window when I came home from deployment. Now she just left. I sat down at the table and stared at her empty chair. The phone buzzed beside me with a message from my commanding officer, some update about a training seminar I was supposed to lead next week. I ignored it. For the first time in years, I didn't want to lead anyone. I wanted to understand what I'd lost. Later that afternoon, I found myself wandering the hallway, stopping by Emma's room. The door was closed, as usual. On the outside, her name was still written in glittery letters from when she was 12. Emma space, keep out. I hesitated, then knocked, gently. No answer. The knock sounded strange coming from me. I'd never had to knock before. Inside, faint music played, soft, sad, the kind of song that teenagers listen to when they're building walls around themselves. I leaned my head against the door and whispered, Emma, we need to talk. Nothing. I wanted to open the door, to remind her that I was still her mother. But deep down, I knew she didn't see me as that anymore. Somewhere between all my deployments, medals, and missions, I'd become her superior officer instead. And maybe that was the day I realized I'd traded bedtime stories for briefings. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice, Major Lawson. I thought about all the times I corrected her. The times I barked orders instead of speaking softly. The times I told her to stand straight, to stop crying, to be stronger. Was I training her to survive, or teaching her to stop feeling? The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 20 years leading soldiers through chaos, teaching them discipline, courage, emotional control. And yet, inside my own home, I'd failed the one mission that truly mattered. I went downstairs to pour a glass of water. The kitchen light flickered, one of those bulbs that always seemed to give up halfway. The same one I kept telling Emma to replace. Her notebook was lying on the counter, open. I knew I shouldn't read it, but my guilt was louder than my conscience. On the page, she'd doodled a little stick figure wearing a military cap. Next to it, she'd written in pencil, Mom's always on duty, even when she's home. I closed the notebook, my throat tight. I realized she wasn't mocking me when she called me by my rank. She was describing what she saw. She didn't hate me. She just didn't know how to reach me anymore. I stood there, holding that notebook like a report from a failed operation. For a moment, I wanted to call her downstairs and fix everything, to say I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be your commanding officer, but words felt like weapons now. Every one I'd used had built the wall between us higher, so I just whispered, to the quiet room, you deserve better than Major Lawson, sweetheart. The refrigerator hummed softly in reply, and as I stared at the dark window at my own reflection staring back in uniform, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know how to stop being Major Lawson. That was the night I knew something had to change, that I couldn't just serve my country, I had to learn how to serve my family. But I didn't know it yet, that the path to becoming mom again would test me harder than any war zone ever did. Because sometimes, the battlefield isn't overseas, it's across the dinner table. The sound of helicopters used to calm me now. Every time one passed over our roof, my daughter would cover her ears. Funny how the same sound means to different things to me. It was purpose. To her, it was absence. I still remember the day I left for Iraq. Emma was 5, clinging to my uniform like she could anchor me to the floor. My husband Tom kept telling her, "Mommy's a hero. She's going to help people. But heroes don't make promises they can't keep." "I'll be home before your next birthday," I said. I wasn't. That was 2010, the year Kabul turned into a city of smoke and sandstorms. The year my unit ran medevacs, day and night, patching bodies faster than we could count. The sun there didn't rise, it detonated. I led a small field medical team near the outskirts, and in the chaos of war, leadership was oxygen. I had to be calm, sharp, unbreakable. They called me Iron Major, a title that stuck like armor. But every night, when the noise died down, I'd unfold the creased drawings Emma sent me, stick figures of our family holding hands, and I'd feel that armor crack. She always drew 3 people, never 4. It was her way of saying, "You're not really here." There was one night I can't forget. A convoy had been hit just outside our post, and we were pulling injured soldiers into the tent. Dust and blood everywhere, the smell of diesel and gunpowder thick as smoke. One of my medics, Johnson, froze mid-operation. His hands shook too much to close a wound. I snapped at him, "Focus, soldier," my voice slicing through the noise. He obeyed instantly, but I saw the fear in his eyes. And right then, a voice from the radio cut through. "Incoming call for Major Lawson. Family emergency, stateside." For a split second, I wasn't Iron Major. I was just a mother. When I reached the comms tent, my CO looked pale. "It's your husband," he said softly. "Your daughter fell at school, broke her arm. She's fine now." Fine. That word is such a liar. I wanted to be on the next flight home, but there were no next flights. There was another mission, another soldier, another bleeding body that couldn't wait. So I stayed, because that's what I was trained to do, to serve the living, even when it meant abandoning the ones who loved me. That night, I wrote Emma a letter. I told her how brave she was. I told her how proud I was. I told her I'd make it up to her when I came home. I never knew a child's forgiveness had an expiration date. Months turned into years. Letters faded into short video calls that always froze mid. I'd catch glimpses her gap-toothed smile, her hair longer each time, but the lag between us wasn't just digital. It was emotional. Tom tried to fill the silence. He sent me photos of her school plays, her art projects, her first bike ride, but I wasn't in a single frame. One night, during a lull between missions, I opened my inbox and saw a message from him titled, "She stopped asking when you're coming home." I read it 3 times, and then I deleted it, because the truth hurt more than the distance. When I finally returned to the States, I expected some kind of grand reunion, the banners, the hugs, the tearful airport moment every homecoming video promised. But real life doesn't cue music. Emma stood behind Tom at the airport, half hiding behind his leg. When I opened my arms, she stepped forward slowly and gave me a hug that felt like politeness, not love. She smelled like lavender, shampoo, and hesitation. At home, everything was the same but rearranged. The furniture, the photos, even the kitchen drawers. My coffee mug was gone, replaced with one that said "World's Best Dad." I told myself it was okay that time changes things, but deep down, I knew the truth. The house had learned to live without me. I tried to reclaim my space, my role, but everything I did felt like intrusion. I folded Emma's laundry one afternoon, and she snapped, "Dad lets me do it my way." I tried to cook dinner, and Tom said gently, "We usually eat later now." Even the dog barked at me like I was a visitor, so I did what soldiers do when they're not wanted. I adapted. I turned back to structure, schedules, checklists, rules. If I couldn't fit into my family, maybe I could command my way back into it. One night, after Emma went to bed, Tom asked quietly, "Do you ever turn it off?" "Turn what off?" I said. "The part of you that's still over there." I wanted to tell him that you don't just switch off survival, that once you learn to compartmentalize emotion, it doesn't go away. It just hides in your tone, your posture, your silence. Instead, I just said, I'm trying. He smiled sadly. So is she. That line stuck with me long after he fell asleep. So is she. I started noticing little things. How Emma avoided sitting next to me on the couch. How she never called me mommy anymore. How she hesitated before asking questions, like she was afraid I'd correct her. It wasn't that she didn't love me, it was that she didn't trust love from me. Any more that the day I realized that fully was a Tuesday. Emma came home from school with her first A in math. I cheered too loudly, like a commander at a briefing. That's my girl. See, discipline pays off. She smiled faintly, then went upstairs. Later I found her essay lying open on the counter. The title read, The House That Never Waited. She'd written, when Mom left, time didn't stop. It just stopped, including her. I sat there reading that line again and again, feeling every word slice into me like shrapnel I never saw coming. All my medals, all my missions, none of them prepared me for that sentence. Because that was the day I finally understood what war really costs. It's not blood, it's birthdays. It's bedtime stories. It's hearing your child laugh in another room and realizing it doesn't belong to you anymore. And for the first time since Iraq, I cried. Not for what I'd seen there, but for what I'd lost here. The night I was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal. The auditorium lights were blinding. Rows of uniforms gleamed under the chandelier's brass ribbons. Starched pride. Cameras flashed. People clapped. Everyone smiled. Everyone except the two people whose faces I kept searching for. Tom had promised he'd bring Emma. She wanted to see her mother being honored, he said. I'd even pressed her favorite dress, the one with little sunflowers, and left it on her bed that morning. But when I stepped up to the podium, there was only one empty chair in the front row. I stood tall, chin high, saluting as they pinned the medal to my chest. The colonel whispered, "Well done, Major Lawson. You make us proud." And all I could think was, my daughter didn't see this. The applause sounded distant, hollow. That medal might as well have been a bullet. Later that night, back home, the house was dark except for the flicker of the television. Tom sat on the couch half asleep, still in his tie. "She didn't want to come," he said softly, before I could ask. "She said, it's not our award." Those 5 words hit harder than anything I faced in the field. Not our award. I wanted to be angry, to say she didn't understand what sacrifice meant, but deep down, I knew she did. She'd been living inside it her whole life. I went upstairs quietly and peeked into her room. Emma was already asleep, clutching her worn-out teddy bear, the one she used to drag through airports whenever she came to say goodbye. The medal felt heavy in my hand. I placed it on her dresser, beside the nightlight that painted stars on her ceiling. Maybe, I thought, one day she'd understand. But days turned into weeks, and the medal stayed there, untouched. Eventually, it just became another object in a room that didn't belong to me anymore. I tried to make up for lost years volunteering at her school, showing up at soccer games, driving her to practice, but even in the car, silence sat between us like a third passenger. Every conversation felt like a debrief. "How was school?" "Fine." "Everything okay with your friends?" "Yeah." And then nothing. Just the soft thump of her earbuds sealing me out. Sometimes she'd hum a tune under her breath, and I'd catch myself turning it into a cadence: 1, 2, 1, 2. Like my brain only knew how to march, not feel. The hardest part wasn't her distance. It was the mirror she held up. One Saturday morning, I caught her standing at the kitchen counter, arms crossed, correcting her little cousin's posture. "Stand straight, shoulders back," she said, my exact tone, my words, my reflection. It terrified me. I realized I was raising a smaller version of myself, disciplined, efficient, emotionally bulletproof, and if she grew up to be like me, she'd never know what softness felt like. That night, I asked Tom, "Do you think I'm too hard on her?" He looked at me carefully. "I think sometimes you talk to her like she's one of your soldiers." I laughed bitterly. "That bad?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. A few weeks later, I was invited to a veterans panel at her school. The principal called it Heroes Among Us. I thought it might be a chance. Maybe if she saw me through her classmates' eyes, she'd feel proud again. I walked in wearing my uniform, medals lined neatly, boots polished. The kids clapped politely. Emma sat in the back row, hood up, eyes on her phone. I talked about leadership, courage, and sacrifice. But, as I spoke, I saw her reflection in the classroom window, bored, distant. Then, a student asked, Major, what was the hardest thing about serving? I froze. I'd answered that question 100 times before. I had a dozen rehearsed responses: losing comrades, facing danger, being far from home. But that day, my voice cracked when I said, coming back, because coming home didn't mean returning. It meant relearning how to live without the armor. When the bell rang, students lined up for photos. Emma slipped out before I could reach her. The teacher smiled. You must be proud of your daughter, Major. She's a remarkable young woman. I nodded, hiding the ache in my chest. Proud, always, but she wasn't proud of me. Not anymore. That evening, I found her sitting on the porch steps, sketching in her notebook. The sky was bleeding orange, the same hue as the deserts I once survived. I sat beside her. You left early today. She shrugged. Yeah, I had homework. You could have said goodbye. She kept drawing, not looking up. You don't say goodbye at home either. You just leave. Her words landed heavy, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Emma, I whispered. I've tried, I know. She interrupted, her pencil scratching faster. You always try, Mom. You just never stay. That night, I didn't sleep again. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the metal glinting faintly on her dresser. It used to represent honor. Now, it felt like guilt cast in metal. Weeks later, Tom told me Emma had signed up for an art competition. I showed up uninvited, sitting quietly in the back. Her piece was titled Homefront. It was a painting of our living room, couch, window, lamp, everything perfectly rendered, except there were two figures in it, her father and her, both sitting together, smiling. The third figure, me, stood outside the window, hand pressed to the glass. That the judge called it a brilliant commentary on absence. The audience applauded, and me, I just stared, unable to move. That was the day I realized Emma didn't hate me. She'd immortalized me in the only way she could, as someone who was always there, but never with them. When we got home, she went straight to her room. I walked into the kitchen, poured a drink, and finally took that medal from her dresser. I turned it over in my hand, reading the engraving, for exemplary service beyond the call of duty. But maybe that was the problem. I'd gone beyond the call of duty and left love behind. So, I tucked the medal away in a drawer. No speeches, no display case, just silence. Because until I could earn back my daughter's respect, that medal meant nothing. It was a Tuesday morning when the call came. The kind of morning that pretends to be ordinary. The kind that fools you into thinking, life won't hurt today, double quotes, Mrs. Lawson. This is Mrs. Turner, Emma's English teacher. Could we meet this afternoon? There's something I'd like to discuss in person. Her tone wasn't urgent, but it carried weight. I'd heard that tone before, the one doctors used before delivering bad news. I told her I'd be there by 3. When I hung up, the kitchen clock ticked too loudly. Emma's cereal bowl was still in the sink, milk curdled, spoon half floating like a white flag. I rinsed it, slower than necessary, wondering what could have gone wrong this time. She wasn't a bad kid. She was just closed off, guarded, like me. Maybe that was the problem. Asterisk, the drive to the school felt longer than any convoy I'd led through the desert. I parked near the flagpole, watched it flap in the wind, and took a deep breath. Inside, the hallways buzzed with the kind of laughter that used to make Emma smile. I passed lockers covered in stickers, bulletin boards with prom posters, and a photo of the student council Emma, in the back row, half smiling, hands folded behind her back, the way soldiers do in formation. When I reached the classroom, Mrs. Turner stood to greet me, kind eyes, coffee in hand, voice gentle but serious. Thank you for coming, Major. She paused midword, catching herself. Mrs. Lawson. I smiled politely, pretending I didn't notice. What's this about? She gestured toward the desk. Emma wrote an essay for our annual Heroes assignment. I thought you should read it before I submit it for the regional contest. My stomach tightened. Contest? She's talented, Mrs. Turner said softly. But the essay is personal. I didn't feel right sending it out without your knowledge. She handed me a stapled packet. I sat down. The title on the first page read, My Mother, the Officer I Fear. The words blurred for a moment before I could focus. Then I read, My mother is brave. She saves lives. She leads people through things most of us can't imagine. But sometimes, I think she forgot how to come home. She doesn't yell. She commands. She doesn't cry. She orders silence. When she looks at me, I feel like she's waiting for me to salute. Each line sliced through me, clean, clinical, honest. I wanted to stop reading. I couldn't. I'm proud of her, but I'm also scared of her, because I've never seen her scared, and I don't know how to be close to someone who never lets anything break them. When I finished, I didn't realize my hands were shaking. Mrs. Turner spoke gently. She's gifted, Mrs. Lawson, but she's hurting. That essay, it's not rebellion. It's a cry for connection. I nodded slowly, my throat dry. She never said any of this. She doesn't know how. Mrs. Turner said kindly, sometimes kids inherit silence before they inherit love. I looked down again at the page, at the name written in neat, looping letters. Emma Lawson, grade 11. And suddenly I saw her clearly, not the defiant teenager, not the girl behind the phone screen, but a child still waiting for her mother to see her. I folded the paper carefully, thanked Mrs. Turner, and walked out before she could see me cry. I sat in my car in the school parking lot for a long time, essay trembling in my lap. Outside, kids poured out of the building, laughing, hugging, slamming car doors, all the noises of a life uninterrupted. And there I was, gripping my daughter's pain printed in black ink. She didn't call me mom, she called me mother, and she called me officer. That was when the first tear broke loose, quiet, hot, unwanted. For years, I'd worn grief like armor, but now it was heavy enough to suffocate me. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and whispered, "What have I done to you, baby?" The essay's last line haunted me. I love her. I just wish she'd come home, not the soldier, just her. That night, I found her sitting at her desk, earbuds in, sketching again. I stood in the doorway, clutching the essay like a confession. "Emma," I said softly. She didn't turn. "What?" "I went to your school today." Her pencil froze Mrs. Turner called you, didn't she? I took a breath. "I read your essay." Her shoulders stiffened. "You weren't supposed to." "I know, but I did, and you're right." That made her turn around. Her eyes were cautious, confused. "Right about what?" "About me, about how I don't know how to come home." Silence. Then, "So what now, Major?" she said, the title laced with pain, not sarcasm this time. I stepped closer. "Now, I start learning." She looked at me for a long moment, searching for something. Then she whispered, "You can't order love, Mom. You have to earn it." Those words landed harder than any reprimand. I nodded slowly. "Then let me try." Later, as she fell asleep, I stood in her doorway watching her breathe, the same way I used to when she was a toddler after nightmares. Only this time, I was the nightmare she needed peace from. I went downstairs, opened a box in the closet, and took out an old photo. The three of us on a beach years ago. Emma on my shoulders, arms wide, laughing into the wind. Back then, she called me Mommy. I'd forgotten the sound of it now. In that quiet house, I saluted the photo, a small, broken gesture, and whispered, "Permission to come home, ma'am." The wind outside brushed the window, gentle as a whisper. Maybe that was my answer. The next morning, Emma came down with her backpack slung over one shoulder. We didn't say much, but before she left, she paused by the door. She looked at me, really looked this time, and said quietly, "Thanks for reading it." I nodded. "Thank you for writing it." And as she walked away, sunlight spilling through the doorway, I realized something. That essay wasn't just her truth, it was my chance to rewrite mine, because somewhere, between duty and love, I had become a soldier at home. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to put the uniform away. The day started with rain, the soft kind that turns the world gray before it even wakes up. I stood in front of my closet, staring at two worlds hanging side by side. On the left, my uniform, pressed, precise, a life measured in orders and medals. On the right, a faded denim jacket, one Emma once painted a tiny red heart on when she was 6. I hadn't worn it in over a decade. The rain outside tapped against the window like an old friend trying to get my attention. And for once, I listened. I slipped out of the uniform and reached for the jacket. It smelled faintly of storage and something older, a version of me I thought I'd buried. When I zipped it up, it felt strange, almost fragile, like armor made of memory. Downstairs, Emma sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone, a half-eaten slice of toast beside her. She looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're not in uniform," she said. I forced a small smile. "Not today." She raised an eyebrow. "Why not? Don't you have that veterans ceremony at base?" "I do," I said, "but I'm not going in official capacity. Just as me." She blinked, unsure what to say. Then she muttered, "You sure they'll recognize you without the badges?" Her tone wasn't cruel, it was defensive. The way a hurt person hides confusion behind sarcasm. I let it go. Maybe it's time they meet the person behind the rink, I said quietly. The drive to the base felt heavier than usual. The gate guard still saluted out of habit, and for a second I almost saluted back, but stopped myself. That small pause felt like breaking a chain I'd worn for 20 years. Inside the hall, rows of soldiers stood in formation, flags lined the walls. A podium stood center stage with the words, "Service and Sacrifice," engraved into its base. I could smell the polish on the floor, the starch on uniforms. It used to be comforting now. It just reminded me how far I'd drifted from my own home. Colonel Harris spotted me. "Major Lawson," he said, smiling. "Sir." I nodded instinctively, then corrected myself. "Actually, just Grace today." He tilted his head. "Civilian mode. Whew, that's rare for you." "Trying something new," I said. He chuckled. "Good luck with that." As he walked away, I realized how deeply my identity had been tied to one word, Major. It wasn't just a title. It had become a shield, one I hid behind even when no one was aiming. After the ceremony, I lingered near the back of the room, watching soldiers swap stories, laughter mixed with the quiet guilt we all carried. Then I saw something that stopped me cold. At the far corner of the hall, a young private stood by the bulletin board, drenched, shaking, staring at the wall of remembrance. The photos of the fallen. She couldn't have been older than 20. Blonde hair tucked under her cap, uniform too big for her frame, hands trembling as she touched one photo. "Everything okay, Private?" I asked, walking up gently. She turned, startled. "Yes, ma'am, yes, just." Her eyes were red. "He was my brother." I glanced at the photo. A young man in fatigues, same last name as hers. "Killed in Kabul." My chest tightened. "I was there," I said quietly. "Kabul, 2011. I remember that mission." She swallowed hard. He always said you were the reason his team made it out." The rain outside hit harder against the windows. "I wasn't the only reason," I said softly, "but I'm sorry for your loss." She nodded, eyes glistening. "He said you had a daughter." I froze. "Yes, he told me once. He hoped you'd get to come home safe to her. That's what he wanted for himself too." The words pierced through me like a bullet from the past. I managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Private." As she walked away, I felt something shift inside me. I had saved people overseas but lost one right under my roof. That evening, I came home drenched. Emma was on the couch doing homework. She looked up, startled. "You're soaked. What happened?" "Rain," I said, "and maybe a bit of truth." She gave me that teenage half smile. "You sound dramatic." I laughed softly. "Maybe I am." I hung the jacket on the hook, the denim one, and saw something behind it. My uniform bag, still zipped, still ready. I unzipped it and stared at the medals, the ribbons, the polished nameplate. "Emma," I said, "come here a second." She came closer, hesitant. I handed her one of my medals, a bronze star, dull with age. "This one," I said, "was for Kabul, for pulling a child out of a collapsed building. We thought she was gone. She wasn't." Emma traced the edge of the medal with her thumb. "You saved her." "Yes," I said, "but I couldn't save what came after." She looked up. "What do you mean?" "I came home with every part of me still on alert. I thought I was protecting you by being strong, but maybe I just built a wall instead." For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she whispered, "That's why you froze when I called you Major, isn't it?" I nodded. "Because it wasn't you being disrespectful. It was you telling me who I'd become." The silence that followed wasn't cold this time. It was heavy, but honest. She turned the medal over again and said, "You could have stayed in uniform forever, couldn't you?" "I almost did," I admitted, "until I realized I was missing the only mission that mattered." She frowned. "Which one?" "Being your mother." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came, just tears that she tried to blink away. Without thinking, I reached out and pulled her close. For the first time in years, she didn't resist. She buried her face in my shoulder, whispering, "I missed you, Mom." And I, for the first time in a long, long time, said the words I'd been too afraid to say. "I missed me too." That night, I placed the uniform bag back in the closet. But this time, I locked it, not because I was ashamed, but because it was time to stop living as the soldier everyone needed, and start living as the mother she deserved. I thought that after our talk, after the hug, after the rain, after locking away the uniform, things would slowly start to fix themselves. I was wrong. Healing doesn't march in formation. It limps, stumbles, falls back, and sometimes hides behind closed doors for days before taking another step. For the next week, Emma and I lived like uneasy allies, not fighting, not quite friends, just two people trying to remember how to be family. Then came the day that tore open everything we hadn't said. It was a Friday morning when I got the call. Mrs. Lawson, this is Principal Hensley. There's been an incident at school involving your daughter. My stomach dropped. Is she hurt? No, ma'am, but I think you should come down here right away. The drive there felt like reliving deployments, adrenaline, confusion, dread. When I arrived, Emma was sitting in the principal's office, head bowed, tears streaking down her face. Beside her sat another student, small, with dark hair and nervous eyes, and suddenly I froze. I knew that face. She was the refugee girl, the one I'd rescued from the ruins of Kabul 12 years ago, the one I'd seen once in a news story. Her name was Laila. And now she was sitting next to my daughter, trembling. The principal cleared his throat. Apparently, some students made cruel remarks about Layla's accent during lunch. Emma tried to stop them, but when she finally shouted for them to knock it off, she used words that escalated things. I looked at Emma, stunned. You defended her. Emma wiped her eyes. Yeah, but it didn't matter. They just laughed harder. They called me Major's daughter, said I only helped because I wanted to feel like a hero too. Her voice cracked. So I snapped. I told them they wouldn't last a day in a war zone. The principal sighed. She didn't hit anyone, but her language was intense. I turned toward Layla. Are you okay, sweetheart? She nodded timidly. Emma helped me. She told them to stop. No one's ever done that. The room fell silent, and for the first time in years, I felt something inside me shift. Pride, guilt, and recognition all tangled together. When we got home, Emma went straight to her room, slamming the door. I stood in the hallway, unsure whether to knock or give her space. Then I heard it, the soft sound of crying. I knocked gently. Can I come in? No answer. I opened the door anyway. She was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. Hey, I said softly, you did the right thing today. She shook her head. It didn't feel right. I just felt angry. I didn't know what else to do. That's because you care, I said, kneeling beside her. You saw someone being treated like they didn't belong. You couldn't stay silent. She looked up, eyes red. Is that what you did, back there, in Kabul? The question hit harder than I expected. I sat down beside her. Sometimes, but not always. There were times I stayed quiet. Times I followed orders instead of my heart. She frowned. Like what? I hesitated. Then I told her, not everything, but enough. There was a mission, I began. We were ordered to leave civilians behind because we couldn't guarantee safety. One of them was a little girl. She reminded me of you. I went back anyway. My unit could have been court-martialed for it. Emma's eyes widened. Was it her, Layla? I nodded. She was just a child. I carried her out myself. I thought saving her would make everything right. And did it? I exhaled. No, because when I came home, I didn't know how to save us. Emma leaned back against the wall, quiet. Then she said something that nearly broke me. You did teach me one thing, Mom, how to survive alone. The words landed like a strike to the chest. She wasn't trying to be cruel. She was telling the truth. I'm sorry, I whispered. That's not what I wanted you to learn. Then what were you trying to teach me? She asked, voice trembling. I took her hand. How to stand up for what's right, even when you're scared. But I forgot to teach you that it's okay to need people too. Asterisk, her grip tightened. You think I was scared today. I think you were brave, I said softly. The kind of brave I wish I'd been when it mattered. That evening, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Layla stood there with her mother. The woman's face was lined with years of exhaustion and gratitude. I hope it's okay we came, she said, her accent still thick but warm. My daughter wanted to thank Emma properly. Emma appeared behind me, hesitant. Layla smiled shyly. I wanted to say, your mom saved my life, and today, you saved mine again. Emma blinked, stunned. I just told them to shut up. Layla shook her head. No, you told them I mattered. The mothers exchanged a glance, hers filled with gratitude, mine filled with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. After they left, Emma turned to me. You never told me you saved her. I didn't think it mattered anymore, I admitted, but maybe it always did. She smiled faintly. I think she's proof it still does. Then she paused. You know what's weird? What? When she looked at you, It wasn't like how people look at soldiers. It was like she saw something softer, something I didn't see before. Her voice cracked. Maybe she saw the mom I used to have. I stepped forward, my own eyes wet. Or the one who's still trying to come back. She nodded slowly. Then don't stop trying. Later that night, I found her report card on the table, the same one she'd once handed me with trembling hands. At the bottom, next to English, Mrs. Turner had written, "Emma's empathy is her greatest strength." For the first time, I believed it, because in one act of courage, one messy, imperfect act, she'd taught me what I'd forgotten. Courage isn't about following orders, it's about breaking them when love demands it. And that was the lesson I never taught her, because I had to learn it from her first thought. The house was quiet again, but this time, it wasn't the silence of distance, it was the silence of peace, the kind you earn, not by winning, but by surrendering, not to defeat, but to love. It had been 3 weeks since the school incident, 3 weeks since I'd seen my daughter stand up for a child I once carried through fire, 3 weeks since I started trying to be a mother again, not the officer in her memories. And today, for the first time in years, we were walking side by side. The morning sun stretched long across the sidewalk as Emma adjusted her backpack. "Are you sure you don't want to come in?" she asked. "They're honoring families of veterans today. You'd fit right in." I smiled faintly. "I've done enough standing at podiums. This is your day." She frowned. "Mom, it's your story they're telling." "No," I said softly, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. "It's ours." She hesitated for a second, then smiled, the kind of small, real smile that had once been impossible. The school auditorium was packed. I sat near the back, out of uniform, just another parent in the crowd. On stage, the principal adjusted the mic. "Today, we honor a student whose essay about courage has inspired not only her peers, but also every adult in this building." Emma stepped up, clutching her note cards, nervous but steady. She cleared her throat. "When I was younger," she began, "I thought courage meant never showing fear. I thought it meant standing straight, speaking loud, keeping your chin up. I thought it meant being like my mom." A few parents turned to glance my way. I looked down, heart pounding. "But now," she continued, "I know courage is different. It's messy, it's quiet, it's saying sorry, it's learning how to love people, even when you've forgotten how." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. "My mom's a soldier. She saved lives overseas, but the bravest thing she ever did was come home, really come home, and let me see her as human." There was a ripple of emotion across the room. Some people wiped tears. I couldn't breathe. Emma looked up, meeting my eyes across the crowd. "This is for her," she said softly. Then she straightened her back, not in defiance, not in formality, but in quiet honor. And before the applause began, she lifted her hand, a salute. Not mockery, not mimicry. Respect. The entire room blurred. I didn't even realize I was crying until the applause swallowed me whole. Afterward, when the crowd dispersed, she found me waiting by the door. We didn't speak for a few seconds. The world didn't need words anymore. Finally, she grinned shyly. "You didn't stand when I saluted." I laughed, wiping my eyes. "That's because I wasn't your commanding officer." She shook her head. "No, you were my hero." I couldn't hold it anymore. I pulled her close, right there in the hallway, medals and ranks forgotten, just a mother and a daughter standing in the wreckage of all the walls they'd built. And, for the first time in years, when she whispered, "I love you, Mom," I didn't hear it as forgiveness. I heard it as faith. That evening, we drove out to the memorial park, the one lined with names of soldiers who never made it home. I used to visit alone, leave flowers, salute, and walk away before anyone could see me cry. But this time, she came with me. We stood in front of the granite wall, the sunset bleeding orange over the names. I pointed to one, the brother of the young private I'd met at the base. "He died saving his team," I said softly. "He told her he hoped I'd make it home safe to you." Emma's voice cracked. "You did?" "Yeah," I whispered. "It just took me a while to realize that home wasn't a place. It was you." She slipped her hand into mine. "Then, don't ever leave again." "I won't," I promised. "Not even when life tries to pull me back into old uniforms." The wind picked up, carrying a faint chill. Emma took something from her pocket, a small, crumpled ribbon. "I found this in your box," she said. "It's from your medal, right?" I nodded. "What?" She crouched and tied it gently around a small branch beneath the wall. "For all the ones who didn't get to come home, and for the ones who did but forgot how to stay." I felt my throat close. She looked up at me, her eyes steady, strong. You taught me to stand up for others, she said. Now I'm teaching you to stand still, right here, with me. I laughed through tears. Dio, as we walked back to the car, she suddenly stopped. What is it? I asked Jot. She turned, sunlight catching the edge of her hair, and said quietly, You know what's funny? For years, I called you Major because I thought that's who you wanted to be. And now, she said, smiling, I just want to call you Mom. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then I straightened out of instinct and saluted her. To my surprise, she saluted back first, hand steady, smile wide, not as soldier to soldier, but as daughter to mother, equal, proud, home. That night, after she fell asleep, I stood by her doorway like I used to when she was small. The moonlight spilled across her face, soft and safe. I whispered, At ease, baby. Then I turned off the hallway light, finally understanding something it took me a lifetime to learn. The bravest battles aren't fought with weapons or orders, they're fought in kitchens, classrooms, and quiet living rooms, where love demands you lay your armor down. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a soldier pretending to be a mother. I felt like both, finally at peace with each. End of part 7, the day she saluted first. Closure, full circle, complete.